Howdy, friends. Welcome to the Run from the Norm podcast, where we celebrate the unique and passionate individuals who turn the outdoors into a playground, one run and one adventure at a time. I'm your host, Jayk Reynolds. In this episode, we dive into the world of coaching, and it is my honor and privilege to share with you my conversation with one of the most successful high school track and cross-country coaches in the state, Tracy Harris. Here are a few interesting facts about Tracy. He has kept a personal training log every year since 1980. He started as a Division III athlete before becoming a successful D1 collegiate runner, which led to running professionally for global brands such as Reebok and Brooks. He became an assistant coach at Boise State under legendary coach Ed Jacoby before eventually taking over as the head cross-country coach at Meridian High School, where he promptly won his first state track and cross-country championship in only his second year as the head coach. He continued his winning ways with additional state titles with Meridian before moving and taking the head coaching job at Mountain View High School, where he has accumulated a total of 15 track and cross-country state titles over the course of his amazing coaching career. Throughout our discussion, Tracy shares his insights on the power of empathy, as well as some unique motivational tactics he has devised that challenge and inspire his student athletes to truly learn what they're capable of accomplishing. We were joined by good friend of the podcast, Sid Sullivan, as we recorded this conversation inside Bandana Running and Walking in downtown Boise, a store he co-founded with his brother Rich, so you will hear a little bit of noise in the background during our chat. And with that, please enjoy this inspiring conversation with 15-time state-winning track and cross-country coach, Tracy Harris. It's time to run from the norm. All right. Tracy Harris, thank you so much for taking some time and sitting down to chat with me. And I would like to start out with just asking you, where did you grow up and what was it like as a kid? Were you outside moving your body, into running? What were you into when you were a kid? What was it like?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for taking the time.
I'm super excited for this. Yeah, growing up I like to tell my athletes, I had the dream childhood. I grew up in Minnesota and then a suburb of Chicago, and I have 5 brothers. So 6 boys, and we crazy household, but we lived outside.
That's awesome.
We just played game after game. I can't recall a time when we weren't outside, and it was the neighborhood kids getting together. You'd come in for a little break, and mom would make you some Kool-Aid. Remember the Kool-Aid days?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then you couldn't wait to get back outside.
Yep, just fuel your body to head back out.
And that was my introduction, I think, to sports and to running via playing outside all the time. It's one of those things where you don't realize you're working hard and exercising because you're having so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was the best.
You're outside playing with your brothers, chasing each other around. When did you start transitioning, getting into some sport maybe?
The first sport I played was basketball, and I played basketball in 5th grade. So I played basketball 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and then I played it all through high school, and I even played a year of college. I didn't start running until I was 14 years old.
And what got you into it?
I went out for cross country my freshman year
of
high school, just because Rich was on the team.
Okay.
And we grew up going to the meets. And then I get into high school. Okay, that's what I'm going to do.
Guilty by association?
Well, yeah. Obviously, I was going to play basketball. That was my first sport. Mm-hmm. But I went out for cross country and pretty successful at it right away and instantly had a love for it. And I was thinking, driving over here, I've been running for 50 years. I started when I was 14. I'm 64. I've been running for 50 years.
That is absolutely awesome.
And I love it. I just love it.
Just love getting out and moving your body.
Yeah.
So where were you in the lineup of the brothers then?
There's 3 younger and 2 older. And it's one of those things with 5 brothers, 6 boys, you've got the competitiveness and the jealousy and all that stuff when it comes
sibling rivalry.
Sibling rivalries especially when it comes to athletics.
Yeah.
A lot of knocking heads.
I was going to say, who was the nice brother and who was the one that was always getting in trouble?
And that Rich was the oldest, and he was most definitely the nicest and the quietest. And then from there on, it was the other 5 of us were
always wrestling around.
But we had grown up in Chicago. We grew up in a suburb just off of Lake Michigan, a place called Lake Forest. And our driveway, we constantly, every weekend, we had pickup games in our driveway, as long as I can remember. we did that. So that was another thing. That driveway could talk.
Oh, the stories it would tell.
The stories it could tell. But then again, you'd get done, you're taking a break, and we'd go in the house and get the Kool-Aid or get a pop, and you're sitting on the car just talking, having fun.
Hanging out with your friends.
Hanging out with your friends, yeah.
Yeah. So then as you start transitioning, you're going through and you're playing basketball, you start moving into track. At what point does running start to take a little bit more of a focus in your life?
I did basketball and cross country and track all through high school. And then as I went to college, I thought, I'm going to do the same thing. I want to play basketball.
Doing both. Where'd you go to college?
I went to a small private school in Minnesota, a place called St. John's University.
Okay.
I went there for 2 years. And my sophomore year, I started to get pretty good at running. I was good in high school. I wasn't great. And in Chicago, it's a little different than Idaho here. I never, ever qualified for a state meet, which was a big goal of mine in Illinois, but I never did it. I got pretty good my sophomore year at St. John's. And so I said, I really want to get out of here and find out how good I can be at running.
What flipped the switch for you?
And at that point, my brother Rich had just graduated from Colorado State, and his coach had taken the job at Idaho State.
Oh, okay.
And so that's how I came out to Idaho. Sight unseen. I'd never been to Idaho before. The coach, Jerry Quiller, flew myself and my younger brother, Colin, who had just run a 154-800 in high school. We were out at the Olympic trials watching Rich in 1980. And then he flew myself and my younger brother from Eugene to Pocatello to visit Idaho State.
Interesting.
And I was going no matter what because the coach was there. I was going to transfer no matter what because I wanted to run Division I. I wanted to see how good I could be. And what flipped the switch was just, I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. You just found the passion.
I just knew that's what I wanted to do.
Was there a shift in your training or anything like that? Or
there was not a shift in my training, but there was more of
mindset.
I put basketball aside. I knew my basketball was over.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm,
said,
absolutely.
Basketball's done.
Focus in on one thing.
I'm gonna see how good I can get at running and steps. Get rid of basketball and transfer schools.
And so you came out to Idaho State. And what are you studying?
Political science.
So you dive into the track at this point. You're doing political science, and then when you start getting coached here, does it start to take off at that point immediately, or
while at Idaho State? So I had a red shirt.
Okay.
Because you're transferring. So I had to redshirt 1 year. And that redshirt year, it was a rude awakening because I was coming from a Division III school to a Division I school. Mm-hmm. And I had, again, like I said, I'd gotten pretty good, but it was a rude awakening. But another thing I talk to my athletes about all the time, it's work works. Mm-hmm. Work works. And I like to think that I worked harder than anybody. And that's how I got really good at Idaho State because I had a little bit of talent, but I worked really hard.
You putting in the effort.
I worked really hard.
What kind of training were you putting in? Was it specific, like track work? Were they getting you out on some long runs?
Yeah, we cross country in the fall and then indoor and outdoor track. And just, it's one of those things where I trusted the coach and what he was telling us to do. Mm-hmm. And I've got all those training logs that I can go back and look at.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Kept all your training logs?
Kept all my training logs. Sid knows this, I think. I started a training log in 1980 and I've kept one ever since.
Oh, wow.
I wish more than anything I had a training log from high school, but I just didn't.
Didn't cross your mind at that point.
Didn't cross my mind. But so to answer your question, I just trusted my coach. Whatever he said, we'd be done with class about 1:15. Okay. I would go down to Davis Field, which is about a mile and a half from where we lived in the dorms, because Q would have the workout posted. And we'd go look at it, and then you'd mentally get psyched for it. Then I'd go back to my dorm room, take a nap, 30, 45 minutes, and then go back down to practice, and boom, we're ready to go.
You're set.
Yeah. And it was just, I just couldn't wait.
Was there any specific workouts you liked more than others?
Yeah, during cross country, I loved, we did mile repeats at a place called Ross Park. That was a key workout for us. And then on the track, we had a workout called Prefontaines that was, we did 2.5 miles of 30-40.
Oh my
30-second 200, 40-second 200, 30-second 200, 40-second 200. And I attribute that to really how I got really good at Idaho State. Those type of workouts, that 30-40, 30-40.
Putting in those efforts.
You had to focus and you had to concentrate.
So you're really dialing in on that mental focus of when it sucks, you're pushing through that wall, getting through that barrier.
Yeah.
What's your most proud moment then of the time that you were running at Idaho State?
So I think I qualified for nationals twice in cross country and indoors, but I think when I got done, my senior year in college, I could have run at any school in the country.
Really?
Based on my times. That made me super proud because that was my own hard work. And I started at a Division III, and I was a 430-miler in high school. And you get all these high recruits and et cetera, and to think that I could have run at any school in the country. Again, based on my times, I could have been at any school. That made me very proud.
Because it was based off of the hard work that you put in. Was there any specific coaches throughout that time that really mentored you in a very impactful way?
Yeah, Jerry Quiller, and that was Rich's college coach. And then he had taken the job at Idaho State, and an instant connection between him and I. And I'd go up and sit in his office and just talk to him. And just talking to him, he would give you so much confidence in the things he would say. And
What questions would you ask him?
And he was just talking about the workout that's coming up and why are we doing it, and what do you think I can run at this upcoming meet, et cetera, et cetera. But he just instilled confidence. And it was one of those things where not only what he did or did not say, but just his aura.
Absolutely. His belief in you.
His belief in you. You can't really pinpoint it. It's just, that's Jerry Quiller. That's Jerry Quiller. And there's high school coaches around the valley like that kids just believe in. And so much of coaching is just encouraging those kids. It's not what you know necessarily. I firmly believe that, especially at the high school level. You're encouraging those kids, you're positive, they're going to respond to that, and they're going to do amazing things.
Which, that's actually a great segue there. I'd like to ask then, at what point through your running career did you start to have that shift to where you had the interest in coaching? Because you're very successful but you've been involved in the coaching around here and impacted so many people. At what point did you start to take that shift where you wanted to take that route?
Yeah, that's a good question. I got into coaching. So I coached at Boise State for 3 years in the mid to late 80s. That got me an introduction to it. And I knew, geez, I'd really like to do this. And I was running. I was lucky enough to, after college, I knew I wanted to still pursue running. And I was lucky enough to be sponsored by a couple of shoe companies, get all my gear and get a couple of travel trips and blah, blah, blah. But as I'm doing that, again, the Boise State gig, that kind of ended, even though I would have liked to have pursued that, but that's a long story.
How did you get that opportunity?
The coach reached out to me, actually, Ed Jacoby. The track's named for Ed Jacoby today. He's a longtime legendary coach at Boise State. He just reached out to me for cross country. He needed a cross country assistant. And when I got there, I was just appalled what Boise State had been doing from a cross country standpoint.
Oh, geez.
It was almost laughable.
Were you doing any coaching at that point?
None. No, none.
Interesting.
None. And so a few years later, I'm standing at a gas station in Meridian. Paul Stinker's still there. And the guy across the pump recognized me, knew who I was, and said, "Hey, how'd you like to come help me?" And so that's 1991. And that's how I got into high school coaching. I was an assistant coach at Meridian High School for about 5 years. And then he ends up retiring. And so that head job opens up. And I'm not teaching at this point. That head job opens up in 1997. And so that was my first year as a head high school coach in 1997. I just knew instantly, even at Boise State, that's something I wanted to do. I just had a knack for it. And I loved as much as when you're competing for yourself, it's awesome. It's an unbelievable feeling to set a goal and achieve it. But I knew that I really wanted to help kids see what they can do in their running.
What do you think it is that's unique about how you approach coaching as opposed to another coach? What's unique to your focus to really bring out the best in them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And when I first got into coaching, I wasn't a good coach. I was a good runner who was coaching.
Yeah, because I'm really interested in that transition. How do you go from a runner to...
When you're at that point in I was still competing. Basically, what I was doing was doing hard workouts with the kids. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And they're looking up to me just because I'm fast. You're out doing the things that they're aspiring to. Exactly.
And putting in the work.
But that transitions to, as I see how the coach that I took over, what he had done, and I'm a big reader and love certain words and I love inspiring and inspiration. And so that got me to thinking, and I was always thinking, what can I do to help these kids? What can I do? And so things just took off from there. What do I do as I got into it, I never emphasized winning. Never. And yet that's all we did. At Meridian, we were, and I don't want to sit here and talk about myself, but we were
this is all about you. We're talking about you right now.
We were so good. We were just clobbering people across the state. My second year as a head coach, we're state champs.
That's crazy.
Who does that? That's crazy.
So what were you doing?
And I wrote a letter. The first thing I did in 1997, I went to the store and bought the book, Coaching Cross Country Successfully by Joe Newton. Joe Newton is the most successful high school cross country coach ever. Coaches at York High School in York, Illinois. He's the only high school coach ever to be on the U.S. Olympic team as a coach.
Oh, wow.
So I read his book. And then I just adapted what that book said. I adapted it to what I learned from Q and then what I learned myself. So that's how I came up with my system. But one of the things that was in that book was a statement that said, remain curious about your abilities. So I took the remain curious. I had t-shirts made. I had just remain curious. And that just took off. Kids started buying me Curious George stuff because of the remain curious. And things just took off from there. So my 6 years, at 5 years coaching at Meridian, we won 6 state titles. We're state runner-up the rest of the times. And again, not emphasizing winning. And one of the other things that I did that might sound really stupid, they all called me Tracy. I don't like being called coach. And so it was instantly a closer connection, I think. Kids felt at ease calling me Tracy as opposed to Mr. Harris or coach.
You're breaking down that wall.
You're breaking down that wall. And I think it's what makes a good teacher, what makes a good coach. It's, charisma.
It seems like it would make you much more approachable in that way.
Absolutely. Much more approachable.
So how did you instill curiosity in them? What would you do specifically to your remain curious?
Sure.
And you tell them this. So what's your follow-up to that? And this is what this means.
So my follow-up to that is I would write quotes. I had a handout every Friday. And the curious part, I said, when you're in a race and you're hurting and something starts to happen, that's when it gets exciting. That's when it gets interesting. Remain curious about what can you do? What can you do to keep going? What can you do to get out of the situation and still finish the race strong? The easy part is just to back off, give up. Just
remain curious about your ability.
Always remain curious about your ability. What can you do? What can I do now? Things aren't going so well. What can I do? How can I get out of this? And again, for whatever reason, at that time, 1998, 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, those 5 years, that saying, that motto just took off.
That's awesome.
It was pretty fantastic.
Sounds like they responded well to it.
They responded well to it. The parents responded well to it. And not in a million years could I have painted that picture. Winning state my second year and then going on a run. My girls win 4 in a row.
And it's all, you're taking it from your experience and you read this book.
Yes.
And now you're starting to write your workouts. And how are you tailoring these workouts for each group?
Yeah. And that's another great question because we had one of the larger teams. But if you've ever been out to Meridian High School back in those days, there's hardly any place to train, any place to run. We basically did all of our workouts in that. It's still there today. The front lawn as you drive by Meridian High School. We did 400 repeats there. We did 600 repeats there. I don't know that we ever did mile repeats. It was pretty simple stuff, but the kids believed in what I was doing and our workouts were competitive just because of the nature of the kids we got. And as we got better, as our teams got better, whether you're a top JV kid or whether you're fighting for that varsity spot. And that's what, even today, that doesn't change. That's what makes a team great is when you have competitive workouts and everyone's trying to fight for those spots or from a cross-country standpoint. And that's going to ultimately make your team better. The more kids you have turning out.
Everybody's pushing each other.
Everybody's pushing each other, yeah.
So I'm curious because obviously as you've got into your career and you've had the success, it's going to build confidence in the program you're putting together and the kids are going to believe in you as they start seeing that you're building on that. Where did the confidence come from initially? Obviously, you're out there and you're a competitive athlete and you're running and you're showing your results on your own side, but you're getting into coaching. Where did you build the confidence from to step up there without knowing a ton in front of these kids and say, follow me, this is what we're going to do. Now, listen to what I have to say. Where did that confidence come from?
For me, the confidence for me?
For you.
No, that was instilled in me from how I grew up, from my mom and dad, and from my 5 brothers. I told you the 6 boys battling each other all the time, and just how I was raised with my mom and dad, them giving us confidence to be our own thinkers and do our own thing. So you take that, and it is daunting when all of a sudden you're in charge of this program. It's just like the first time a teacher steps into the classroom and you're facing all these kids. Yeah. That's a daunting situation.
They don't know you, and you're standing there saying, okay, I'm going to take you there. You need to listen to me. And they don't know you from anybody.
Yeah. But from a coaching standpoint, from where these kids were and who they had before to who you have now, I think just right off the bat, as they hear you talk and the things you say, it puts their mind at ease and the rest just follows suit. I don't know if that answered your question, but again, that's one of those things that charisma, confidence, those are things that can't be taught.
And what I'm taking away from it as I hear you explain your answer is you were authentic. Yeah. This is me. This is who I am. Exactly. I'm not going to feed you a bunch of BS. Yes. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it together. And you were giving them an opportunity to be a part of something that could potentially be great, as long as you came together and did that as a team.
Absolutely. And it just snowballed. And it just snowballed. And then you get kids talking about it and word of mouth, and more kids come out the next year. And then the cross-country program, this is at Meridian, the cross-country program is more successful than the football program and the basketball program. Who does that? What school does that happen at? Where that's the in thing to do. Go out for cross-country.
Yeah. You start seeing results and it just snowballs.
Start seeing results and everything just clicked. For whatever reason, it's one of those things where I was a natural at it.
Yeah.
I was good at it right away. I think, again, because of my background, how I grew up, a real tight-knit family. Got a saying before we went to bed, my parents, 6 boys and mom and dad, that's 8. 8's my favorite number to this day. And we had 8 together. And whenever I had a handout to my kids, my athletes, I would, number 1, think positive. Number 2, remain curious. Or the upcoming meet, whatever. Number 8 was always 8 is great. And it took a long time because the kids would always ask, what's 8 is great? Why is 8 great? And then I finally told everyone the story. Just 8 is great because there's 8 people in my family and 8's my favorite number. And
that's awesome.
To this day, every time, 8 is great. 9, whatever, go back to what you're talking about, but 8 is great. And that's something, those kids are going to remember that number the rest of their life because of those handouts.
And you're willing to share your story.
Yes.
So how do you find the balance with them being good athletes, but also being student athletes? If you have somebody that might be struggling, but say they're a great runner, how would you approach that?
Yeah, and it's gotten harder and harder every year. Mm-hmm. One of the things I emphasize to this day, and it still drives me crazy, is you have to create a balance in your life. You have to create a balance in your life. So if you've got we're in track season now, you've got your track, you've got your school, you've got your family, you've got your social life. You have to create that balance. Not one thing can't overtake another, or it's just going to derail you. And most kids get that. Some kids don't. From a coaching standpoint, even from a teaching standpoint, that's what I try to tell them. You have to create a balance in your life. I guess that's the best answer I can give. That opens up a whole, from an athletic standpoint, and every kid, no matter how fast or slow they are, they want to get better. Mm-hmm. And they want to, like in track, they want to set a PR. And what I always tell them is the number one thing you can do outside of running is get a good night's sleep. And yet these kids are up at night on TikTok, on social media, on a million other things. And they all think they're Superman or Superwoman because they stay up so late. And if they would just heed the advice now, things could change for them.
They don't see that long-term effect that's going to have on it.
They don't see the long-term effect, and they don't think. The big thing is they don't think it's affecting them. Oh, I can do it, and still I can do it. I'll be fine. Some of the things you tell them, they'll do, and some of the things you'll tell them, they'll hear it, but it'll go in one ear and out the other. You just wish that they would, especially some of the kids who, as you see the talent, the kind of talent they have, you just wish they would heed that advice to see what they could really do if they were getting a good night's sleep, if they were staying hydrated, et cetera, et cetera.
How has your coaching had to change? As you'd mentioned social media, how has your approach had to change from before it was such a common thing to where it is now, where, like you say, if kids are up all night staring at their screens, different social media platforms, does it change your approach at all?
It does, because one of the things, also one of the drawbacks of social media, especially in this day and age, in the past 3 to 5 years from a coaching standpoint, is those kids, the top kids, they can see just about any workout from anybody. And so they can look up. They can look something up. And then you throw the parent in there reading something about so-and-so did this. Oh, man.
How do you deal with that?
You've got, why isn't my kid doing this? Or what if we did this? And another saying that's not my saying, it's been out there, is just trust your training. You have to trust your training. You have to trust your coach. There's just so much information out there that the kids can be exposed to. And I have one of my best runners, and he's just an awesome kid, but he's constantly on social media and digging around and checking everything out.
Comparing.
And comparing. And it's just chill out.
How do you keep him focused? How do you bring him back?
Again, the trust your training and the fact that they're doing that, we're doing this, so-and-so's doing that. There's no secret workout.
Right.
There's absolutely no secret workout. You just, works.
Yeah.
Work works. I love that saying, work works. Sometimes, though, it's tough to bring them back.
Yeah.
It's tough to bring them back. But then a lot of times the other kids will jump on board to say, hey, just trust what Tracy's doing, et cetera, and look what he's done in the past. And sometimes you really have to do that because, believe it or not, again, with so much information out there, some kids think, geez, if that guy did this and he ran this, if I do it, I'm going to run that too.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't understand. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
It just does not work like that.
And as Sid was saying, putting in that consistent effort.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's gotten very challenging from a coaching standpoint. And one of the things I've had to do is I've always been a real laid back, easygoing guy, but I went through a stretch just before the pandemic and then a couple of years after the pandemic where I lost my patience and I was angry and I was not a good coach. And so I've really had to become more flexible.
How do you manage your stress?
It's hard. Same thing with the kids. You have to create that balance in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with if you're a high school, college, or professional, a lot of those coaches bring their work home with them. I still lose sleep over some of my kids. Okay, how's this person going to do tomorrow? I'm really worried about how well they're going to race, and I know it means a lot to them. And think about it as how many athletes you have, and then think about all the things that are going through your mind for different athletes. And the kids don't understand that. They don't realize that Tracy's running through his mind with all these different kids. They just think he shows up, here's the workout, I got my watch, go, stop. They don't understand what the involvement is in coaching. And another thing I tell those kids so often, I said, listen, as I get the kids together and I say, I guarantee you, a lot of you guys are going to be coaches someday. It might just be your kids' 7 and 8 year old soccer, whatever, but you're going to be a coach and you'll get a small appreciation for what coaches go through. And some of them will grow up and they'll be high school coaches as well. And they'll understand what I was talking about.
Some of that stuff you just don't know until you get to that point in hindsight.
You don't.
Yeah. So how do you manage, you have all these kids out there and everybody's at different abilities. How do you effectively coach all of them to try to get the best out of each and every one and make them all feel seen and heard and focused on when there's so many different things to make sure that you got your fingers?
Yeah, another phenomenal question. And when I first got into coaching, going back to them, one of the things I told myself is I want to make sure I hit every kid. I don't want to just focus on the fast kids. They're going to take care of themselves. That'll take care of themselves. So you can put an assistant coach over there and say, hey, time these kids today. If the head coach is paying attention to the JV kids, that's the hugest statement in the world.
Yeah.
Those JV kids are going, wow. He thinks I'm important.
Because they're expecting you to go focus on the fast kids.
Exactly. And what other program other than cross country and then track from a distance standpoint, do you have a head coach with that group of kids? Football, it's varsity football, it's JV football. The varsity coach is never with the JV football players. Same thing with baseball.
Great point.
Same thing with basketball. Same thing with lacrosse now. Same thing with soccer. You have the JV coach and you have the varsity coach.
There's a specific divide.
Exactly. Cross country and distance and track where you have a head coach with those JV kids. That's amazing. And that's a statement in the sense that those kids, again, wow, that's the head coach and he's over here with me and these other kids who are the slowest kids on the team. And he thinks we've got something.
Making sure that everybody matters equally.
Yeah.
How many kids do you think you've coached over your lifetime so far?
Oh, man.
Tough one.
Over 1,000. I mean,
that's awesome.
Yeah, easily. Easily over that.
Sid's you're saying 2,000. It's probably hard to count.
Yeah, easily over that. But then I look at the kids that have gone on to college and run in college. And that's another thing that makes me so proud. And I could really start getting into this now.
Yeah. What drives you day to day, even this far into your career?
But there's been, Idaho in the past 10 years has just skyrocketed from distance runners and even other.
As far as the number of involvement?
As far as the quality.
Gotcha. Okay.
We got some top kids in the country. I mean, Nathan Green at UW now, but blah, blah, blah. But Rocky Mountain and Boise year in, year out have phenomenal teams. And I do as well. But what's made me really happy is I've had so many kids go on to college and be very successful in college. Whereas look at some of these other state champions and from some of these other schools. And a lot of these kids end up quitting, get burned out, never run as well as they did in high school. Never run as well as they did in high school. I have a girl right now, Howdy, who's at BYU, and she's redshirting her this year of outdoor track because she's focusing on the Olympic trials.
Oh, wow.
And she was one of the best in the country when I had her in high school. But I didn't... one of the things I tell myself again when I have a great runner is don't get greedy with this kid. Because it's easy to do.
I can imagine.
It's easy to get greedy and, all right, if she runs this, I'm going to get all this recognition and blah, blah, blah. And I did Lexi and Hillary Holt, who went on to become an 11-time national champion at the NAIA level.
Holy smoke.
And a lot of these other kids who went on to very successful college careers. It's because they didn't get burned out and trashed in high school.
So how do you temper your competitive fire then to keep them pulled back as they need to?
Super good question because there's nobody as competitive as me. I told you when I first got in, I never talked about winning and I still don't. But of course that's what I want to do.
But it's a component for sure.
Of course that's what I want to do. It's hard. It's hard because it's...
Does game day face look different than...
Not really, but you have to... Again, the kids are just so... There's so many things today's world that's going on in their life. All the distractions and a lot of things that as a coach and a teacher, you don't see. And again, so many parents are in...
How do you deal with that? Because as you said earlier, you have all these kids, but you also have all these parents. So how do you deal with we'll say helicopter parents that really want to be extremely involved in telling you how to do your job?
The great thing is you don't see a lot of that in cross country and track. Okay. You see it more in those sports where it's playing time. Okay. But there is periodically you will see it in running as well. And I think the big thing is, and just like in anything, in any relationship, whether it be with your wife or your kids, it's communication.
Absolutely.
It's talking to them. It's amazing how many kids don't talk to their parents. When I came home in high school, every day for part of the 8 together and 8 is great.
Yes.
We had to sit down dinner together.
Sit at the table and share your stories.
My mom and dad, hey, how was practice today? How was school? What'd you do? Who'd you talk to?
Go around the table and everybody shares.
Yes, and I don't know that happens.
Yeah.
In fact, I ask my kids, I say, how many of you have a meal together? And if I have 30 kids in the class, there's maybe 7 or 8 of them where the hand goes up. The other kids are eating on the couch or eating up in their bedroom, or they have to make the meal themselves because mom and dad are working.
Yeah.
A lot of different scenarios. What
do you think the greatest compliment you've ever received from a student is?
I literally have thousands and thousands of notes from kids.
I can only imagine.
And I would love to somehow, I don't know how, I would somehow love to put that into a book someday. Okay, but here's to answer your question. 5 days ago, a kid that I coached, and when this kid came, he moved from California, and I still remember him. He was a junior when he moved here from California, and he was in my honors history class. He's sitting in the back. And he wasn't heavy set, but he was overweight, okay? He comes out for cross country his junior year, runs cross country, runs track, runs his senior year, drops a lot of weight. I used to put on a big cross-country camp up in Sun Valley. And later on, Doug came back and was one of my counselors.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Now, you know the show JAG? The lawyers in the military?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what Doug does back in Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow, interesting.
Okay, but he put that aside, and then he was working for a congresswoman. Right now, that's what he's doing.
Okay.
So he sends me a text 5 days ago, and I'm paraphrasing. I have it on my phone. I could look at it, but I will look at it. I'll read it to you.
Please.
This is pretty amazing. And this is a great compliment, to answer your question. I don't know if that's the greatest, but I read it to my team that day, and I became very emotional. He goes, Senate's out of session this week, and my boss is on a congressional delegation to Asia. Time for a run. I get emotional right now. One of the greatest gifts I've ever been given is that you taught me to be a runner. Thanks, Tracy.
That's amazing. To them that much to that.
I'm emotional right now reading that. One of the greatest gifts I've ever been given is that you taught me to be a runner.
And as you said, that is one of, I can only imagine, many that whether you receive it or not, but people have that response to everything that you've done.
And so and this kid, not in a million years was he a varsity kid, but we connected on a personal level.
Yeah.
When he was a counselor up in Sun Valley at camp, him and I laughed so hard. And now look where he's at.
And it goes back to what you were saying. You're focusing on even the JV runners as much as you are, if not more at times, than the varsity runners, which those are probably the ones that don't get the attention. They're middle of the road in what they're doing, and they're not getting that immediate attention because they're the fastest or whatever. And the fact that you're actually taking the time to give them that direct attention, it obviously has impacted them through the entirety of their life.
Yes.
That is amazingly powerful.
Yeah. And it's pretty cool to see. He just had a baby, and he'll expose them to running, and it's pretty cool. And the other thing about running is, as you introduce these kids to running, they can do it the rest of their life. Look at Sid and I. Look at you.
Yeah,
we're at this age, and we're still doing it.
Absolutely.
And I love it just as much, if not more, than I ever did. I can't run as much as I used to, but I still hammer and go hard twice a week.
Yeah,
that's important to me. I want that feeling. I don't want that feeling ever to go away.
That's what I love about running. As you touched on, it can shift throughout the entirety of your life, but it still has such a huge impact to you personally.
Right.
But then now the thing that I love about what you're sharing is you've taken that and you're imparting this love onto all these other people, and it can impact their lives going forward. Yeah. How do you approach the mental health side of this thing? Because mental health is such a big issue with kids nowadays. Do you address that in your coaching style and your coaching strategies, the benefits that being outside and movement and running can have on your mental health, or you just focus on the work while we're here?
I don't bring up mental health. Does that make sense?
Sure. Sure.
That the fact that they're out for cross country or they're out for track, that's helping their mental health.
I guess you're just celebrating the moment.
That's helping them.
Yeah.
And no matter what. And there is kids, you will get a handful of kids, especially in cross country, who their parents are forcing them to come out for cross country, or it's you have to do a sport, pick one. You still get parents that do that to kids.
You're focusing on it by having them out there and participating and doing the thing.
That's exactly right. You got to be careful as a coach, especially in this day and age, what you talk about and what you say.
I hadn't thought about that.
We were having this conversation, or just this past week, of all things, religion, and you just don't bring that up with these kids. And there's apparently some coaches doing that, and that's a quick way to get fired. It's a fine line. That's a quick way to get fired. So you have to be careful what you say, and even the mental health is a huge, massive issue. But the fact that they're out is helping them from a mental standpoint.
You're addressing it. It sounds like you're addressing it with action rather than words.
Yeah. But to follow up with that, I've definitely had conversations with athletes, because you can tell they're stressed out about a million different things. That male or female trusts you as a person that they can come to and talk about anything.
How much do you? Let's see. I don't know how to position this. How much? I don't want to say more. Does it mean to you to have that relationship and be able to impact them on that personal level as it does to impact them on their performance?
Yeah, I love both.
Yeah.
I personally love both. I love the performance, and I love having that characteristic that they can come to me, talk to me about anything. I love being that person, because again, going back to how I grew up, my dad, I still remember those talks, those conversations. He would just build me up just from talking to him. And I think I have that ability to do that to these kids, and they can walk away feeling much better about themselves than when they came to me. And through my coaching career, there's been, at the high school level, I've had 3 direct suicides.
Oh my goodness.
That 2 of them were athletes on my teams at some point. Actually, 3 of them.
Oh my gosh.
3 of them. And these are kids who, and I got one of them, the first one, I got a phone call in the middle of the night from the other athletes saying so-and-so did this. And they called me and wanted, what do I do? What do I do?
How do you process it on your own, just as an individual who is impacted by this? But then how do you translate that into being there for these young people who might not be able to understand that?
It's extremely hard. And the most important thing is they need to know that you're there for them. And that's the most important thing, at least I think. And again, communicating with them and what can I do to help you? And because so many of these kids are just crying out and starving for attention.
Yeah.
Because they're not getting it at home, or they're not getting it wherever. So that's a big deal.
So you're showing that compassion and giving them a listening ear.
Yeah, compassion's a huge word. A huge word.
Speaking of words, there's a couple of words that I'd like to touch on here that seem to have some pretty impactful meaning with you. One, we'll start with the one on your shirt here. Can you explain what Shackleton is, what that means?
Another, again, I'm a big reader, and Ernest Shackleton is a very famous Antarctic explorer, and his story is just beyond compare. And I won't go into that with you right now. I'm
going to write that down. I'm a huge bookworm too, so I'm going to have to get some book references from you.
Read Endurance. It's called Endurance. And after I read his book, I've read every one of his books. I just became captivated.
What was it about his books that captured your attention?
The story. And the fact that long story short, he gets stuck in Antarctica and he gets every single person back alive. He had 27 people, and Ernest Shackleton was in charge. And this is in
I've heard of this story.
1914, outbreak of World War I. And
I'm going to have to read this. I don't remember the specifics, but I've heard of this.
It's unbelievable. And it just came up recently in the past year because after all this time, they located his ship that had sunk in the Weddell Sea.
Okay.
And they found his ship.
Really?
Yeah. And so that's when Shackleton the name and the story came up again.
Okay.
But it's considered one of the greatest survival stories of all time. And there's 2 leadership books written about what Ernest Shackleton did to get these people back safely. It's a remarkable story. So I took that, and I had this shirt in February, we have a thing called Shackleton Week, and that's a week-long thing, and it's a tough week where the kids have to test themselves, test their body, test their mental capacity. Can they keep going? Can they get through this? This is a tough week. So the Shackleton part is just
very impactful to you, obviously.
So impactful. It's one of those books where I can just pick it up and start reading it, and just 2 hours later, I'm flipping through it. It's awesome. The story's incredible. Just absolutely incredible.
I'm definitely have to read this, but
it's that. What's that?
The kids that developed it. Your athletes that developed it.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Again, it's one of those things that I use as a motivator from a racing standpoint. If Ernest Shackleton can do this, you can certainly get through 4 laps of your race.
Workout.
And little stuff like that, I think, goes such a long way with the kids. A story like Shackleton, and that's why I do handouts and motivational things. That the kids are reading that, and then I encourage them to put it on your locker, put it on your notebook, so you can just look at it periodically.
So you're doing so much more than just standing out there and clicking the stopwatch. You're very involved with...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So there's a second word here. I have to look at this to make sure I say it right.
Spizzerinctum.
Spizzerinctum. What is spizzerinctum?
So another thing that again, for whatever reason, I don't even know how it got started, but when I first started coaching, I had a theme every year. And kids are going to remember those the rest of their life, the themes we've had. And last cross-country season, I loved different words, and it was spizzerinctum. And in a nutshell, that simply means the will to succeed. Okay? That's all that means, the will to succeed. And plus, it's a cool word.
It is.
It's a cool word. It's, as you look at it, it just looks cool. It sounds cool to say.
Catches your attention.
It catches your attention. And then we get shirts made up. And then people from other teams are going, wow, what does that mean?
Start asking questions. Inspires that curiosity.
And the kids love talking about it or telling them or saying, I can't tell you.
That's pretty ingenious, actually, now that I think about it. You throw something out like that, and it captures the kids' attention, but now you get them out talking to other people and sharing those stories. So now you're having an even greater impact.
Absolutely.
That's pretty damn smart.
Absolutely. And the whole Remain Curious thing, when I started that at Meridian, I had other coaches coming up to me, asking me about it and wondering why and how'd you get this started. And that's just a little thing that I thought was cool. And the fact that I put stuff on T-shirts made it even better.
Well, that's cool, because as we're talking, I'm seeing just how much of your own personality and personal influence you're putting into your coaching, which just drives that much more of the authenticity that you're sharing with these kids, which I can only imagine draws them in even more. So, which leads to my question. So you have other coaches coming to you and wanting to know how you're doing it. I'm sure there's some competitive side between the coaches. How do you deal with all the coaches coming together for the common good?
Right.
But then the competitive side of, we're still coming for you.
And that's one of those things where, and again, going back to, I'm ultra competitive, but there's no secret workout. One of the best coaches in the state right now is Aaron Allswanger at Boise High. I coached Aaron in high school.
Really?
I have a Remain Curious tattoo, the only tattoo I have, okay?
That's awesome.
Well, I coached Aaron in high school. and he has this tattoo
Really?
on his ankle. That just tells me the impact I had on Aaron.
Absolutely.
And Aaron and I stayed in touch all through he went to Idaho State and ran at Idaho State, and then he took a college coaching job out in California, and he'd constantly be texting me and calling me for advice. And now here he is. He's one of the very best in the country.
Wow.
He's that good. And I feel great about that. I feel like I had a little bit of an impact on that. One of the coaches that I looked up to when I first got into it, Ron Esquina was his name. And Ron just passed away a few years ago, and I went to his funeral. And he was the coach at Centennial High School, because when I first got into coaching in 97 or 91 when I was the assistant, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, Centennial was the best program in the state.
Just dominant.
His number one runner, a guy named Billy Herman, who was a state champ, went on to NAU and was an All-American in the steeplechase. Billy was there, had a great conversation with Billy. But I looked up to Ron Esquina. I wanted to be like Ron Esquina. And I'm sure Aaron at some point said, maybe I can do what Tracy did.
Yeah.
I have no idea if that's true, but I'm sure I had a little bit of an impact.
I would imagine if he's getting a tattoo of something that you present.
Exactly.
You had a heck of an impact.
And I felt, at one point I felt like I was one of the top coaches in the country. And now Aaron is, and it's pretty cool to see.
I can only imagine.
It's pretty cool to see.
So what keeps you motivated now and keeps you excited, and where are you drawing inspiration from right now?
First of all, I can't believe I'm this old, but I feel phenomenal. I don't know what it's supposed to feel like at 60, and being around high school kids keeps you young. But what inspires me is the same thing. I want to see what these kids can do. Mm-hmm. We had a meet last night, and we had one of the best performances my distance kids have had in forever. It was amazing.
And why do you think that is?
They're finally believing in themselves. They're believing what I have to say. Mm-hmm. And their consistency is the absolute number one thing. You have to be consistent with your training. And again, that goes back to creating a balance in your life. Because if you're not creating a balance in your life, one thing's going to take over, then you're sick, then you're hurt. And if you're sick and you're hurt, you can't be consistent in your training. Everything affects everything. I mean, I have a couple girls going to run D1 next year, and I want to see how fast they can run this spring. They're both just loaded and only now really starting to believe in themselves. And
just get you excited to see what they can accomplish.
Gets you excited, and then I can't wait to when they get in college and follow their college careers.
I was going to say, what you're doing really is like the gift that keeps on giving, is because you have this opportunity to impact them here, and then you can continue to follow them. But it's like you're constantly getting this funnel of new people that you can impact and seeing the trajectory of their lives from the influence that you might have had.
And I know also, unfortunately, that my coaching career is winding down.
I actually have a question on that.
My coaching and teaching career, because I have a grandson, and I want to be, and I already am, but I want to even be more part of his life. And my family's already out in Colorado, and I'm here by myself finishing up.
Oh, geez.
And so that'll take on a whole other meaning, because I'll volunteer to help whatever he's doing, and hopefully I can pick up a coaching gig out there.
And life will take the next step.
Yeah, life will take the next step. And coaching and teaching, those are things that just, man, they don't stop.
It's bigger than you.
They don't stop. It is bigger than you.
Yeah.
It is bigger than you.
With everything that you've done and everything that you've accomplished, is there any one last bucket list goal that you still have left to achieve or accomplish? Or could you say that I've done the things that I wanted to do?
I've won 15 state titles, and there's coaches who coach a lifetime and never
even come close to that.
Come close to that, or they just want one. And I saw 15. That's crazy. I'm so lucky. And I've been, a coach of the year a million times. And like I said earlier, I've been recognized as one of the top coaches in the country. And
that's amazing.
That's incredible. I couldn't ask for anything more. And I never would have imagined that. But NXN is the big thing in high school cross country now. And I've had individual qualifiers, but one of my goals was to get a team there. And that would be my bucket list. And we've come very close a couple times, and we're going to have a real strong boys team next fall. And so I'm excited about that. If you're asking from a coaching standpoint, that would be it.
For you personally.
From a personal greedy standpoint, that's what I would like to do. Yeah. Qualify for NXN as a team, because that's a
pretty big deal.
It's bigger than a big deal.
Be the cherry on top.
It's so hard to do. And it's the only true championship at the high school level in any sport. Yeah. It's the only true championship at the high school level. But otherwise, I could walk away. I'm so lucky and blessed what I've accomplished and the impact kids have had on me and I've had on them.
Beyond your wildest dreams.
And again, I get emotional right now I just go back to my parents. I won the parent lottery growing up.
And that is huge. Yeah. I don't know if this might be a tough question to answer then. How would you define success? It's a tough one.
It's a very tough one.
Yeah. Simple question, hard to answer.
Success is different for everyone. But I think to have accomplished a goal, whatever that is, that's being successful. To have accomplished a goal, whatever it is. And that goal is different for everyone. And again, and that's where, just from a running standpoint, you have slow kids and you have fast kids. Okay? And they all have goals. And so that slow kid, maybe he's a 7-minute miler, and that goal is to run 6:30. That's huge for that kid. That's success. To have accomplished a goal that you set out to do and you put in the work.
Yeah.
And you're seeing the benefits of your hard work. That's pretty tough to beat.
Yeah.
That's a pretty incredible feeling. I can't tell you the look in some of these kids' eyes. Just yesterday, I had a couple of kids break 5 minutes for the first time. You would have thought they'd won the $1 million lottery. They were so happy. And then to show up at 8:30 this morning at Ann Morrison for that long run, beyond ecstatic.
You had touched on it earlier, is you're giving them that belief in themselves they might not have fully had before that moment.
Yeah. And that's all it is, believing in that kid. And that's why, again, going back to what's the successful coach, it's an encouragement.
First off, I want to say thank you so much for sitting down and taking this time with me. I truly do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I do have two additional questions I would like to ask, and one of them actually ties on, you were just mentioning, with the coaching side. So what advice would you give to somebody who might be, say, a runner going through high school into college, and they want to get into coaching? What advice would you give somebody that wanted to possibly look into getting into coaching young athletes?
I think the number one thing in this day and age is you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to be flexible. And there's a lot of people out there that aren't flexible.
And when you say flexible, could you...
Flexible meaning flexible in how you approach your coaching. Because, again, the kids have so many different things going on in their life. And there's some coaches out there, even at the high school level, that are so strict and stringent, and they wonder why their kids aren't performing. That's the reason. You have to be flexible. That's so important today. Spring break. It bothers me to no end when kids miss spring break. But that's life. Parents are taking them on vacation or whatever. As a coach, you have to trust that they're going to get their runs in, you know what I mean?
That they're prescribed.
And even though some of them won't. But it's still, to this day, it bothers me. But there's nothing I can do about it. That's their family. I went on to Aspen. We missed the first week of track season when I was in high school because we went on a ski trip. You think I'm gonna postpone that ski trip to go stay there and run? Yeah. And so I know where they're coming from, but as you know, that's the competitive nature, the competitive side of me, because I'm thinking, geez,
if they only knew.
They go away for a week and they don't run, that's gonna impact them. So being flexible is huge. I just think you need to be genuine. And then I also think I'm a firm believer in pick up a book and read something about coaching and about know your craft.
So I'm going to ask another side question off of that, because like I said, I love reading too. Is there any one book that meant the most to you out of all the ones that you read that you would like to recommend to somebody else?
The answer to that is no. I'm big on autobiographies and stuff, and I love reading those. I love reading stories about different people. I love inspiring stories. Yeah. Because I'll go through a book and I'll highlight things and I'll go, okay, I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this phrase. I'm going to use this phrase. This is going to help my coaching. And so that's how when I read a book, that's what I'm thinking. How's this going to help me from a coaching standpoint? How's this going to help me from a teaching standpoint? Literally, when I'm reading books, that's what I'm thinking.
Got the highlighter in your hand.
That's what's on my mind. How's this going to help me become a better teacher? How's this going to help me become a better coach?
That's awesome.
It's always been that way. And I'm looking for, again, the spizrinctum and the different words. I love it.
I'll share with you my word, because I'm a word guy too. Mine's Scythurism. The sound of the wind through the trees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Scythurism. That's because I love weird words too that they get stuck in your head.
Yeah.
But that's my word.
How do you spell that?
I'll have to write it down for you, because actually now I'm spacing the exact. I want to put an H in there, and I don't think there is one.
Yeah.
So for this last question, it's a tough one, but especially with everything that you've done, you've accomplished so much, and you've impacted so many people. But what does legacy mean to you, and what's the legacy that you want to be remembered for?
That's funny. That's a great question, because legacy is a great word, and I teach history of rock and roll in addition to U.S. history. And I talk about legacy of certain musicians. And so I ask the kids, what does that mean? What does the word legacy mean? And then some of the kids get stuck. And so I say, okay, what's Michael Jordan's legacy? And so then they can start putting two and two together. I think my legacy, I think they'll say he was fair. Tracy Harris was fair. And he was probably the most passionate guy I've ever come across. And they throw the word passion in there with me when they're talking to their kids and grandkids when I'm long gone. It'll make me pretty happy. Yeah, I'm proud of what I've accomplished and what I've done. Again, in high school, the pinnacle is state titles, and that's cool. But I don't want that to be my legacy. I've had so many. Doug Germano, I read you that text. That's
that impact.
That's more important to me than winning a state title, stuff like that. That's true and that's genuine. I love winning state titles, but I love the fact that I still have a connection with Doug, and the fact that out of the blue, he sends me that text.
Yeah, that's
out
pretty
of the blue. So that's pretty
powerful.
So it's a great question, and it's a great, who knows what someone's legacy is going to be as you get older. As you get older, and again, I don't know what 60 is supposed to feel like, but I feel pretty good. But as you get older, you start thinking about all sorts of different things, and you start thinking about that, not necessarily that word legacy, but you start thinking about, at least me, when you're dead and at your funeral, what are someone going to say about you?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
What's someone going to say about you?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
It's a tough one to answer.
It's a tough one to answer. I
think you summed it up, though, as you're saying, though. You want to be remembered as somebody who was caring and passionate.
Passionate about what he did. And I was that way about coaching and teaching.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing the impact that you've had on all these young athletes all the way into adulthood, to where you're getting messages like that. You're getting tattoos with people too. Obviously, you're having that impact.
Yeah,
and it's pretty amazing to see.
It's been a good ride. Yeah. It's to think that it's going to be over is weird.
It's not yet.
It's weird.
Yeah, still got a ways to go.
Anyway, I've enjoyed
Tracy,
the heck out of this.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
And thank you, Sid. And I'll add something. I'm just in awe of what Sid does. And I thank him for how he helped my cross-country program this past fall, and just putting this gig together, and the things he does for the community is incredible. It's incredible. And it's stuff like that. And it goes back to, real quick, another thing I'll say, speaking of that, whether it be my runners or my students, Chris Peterson, the former Boise State coach, I went and saw him speak several times, and he's amazing. And one of the things he said that stuck with me, and it's so true, you are who you roll with.
Absolutely.
You are who you roll with. And I try to tell some of these kids in high school, and they just don't get it.
You are a product of, what do they say, the 5 people that you surround yourself the most, and it is so true.
Quit hanging around this knucklehead. You're going to be a knucklehead.
Yep, absolutely.
You are who you roll with. That's the truest statement ever. You are who you roll with.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably a great spot to leave it too.
Yeah.
Remember, you are who you roll with. Yep. Surround yourself with good and positive people that show passion, that want to see you succeed. And you've absolutely done that throughout your life and career. And Tracy, I really do appreciate you taking this time.
Again, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So fun.
Yeah,
cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And with that, we wrap up another episode of the Run from the Norm podcast. And I want to say thank you again to my guest, Tracy Harris, head coach of the Mountain View High School track and cross country programs, as well as a sincere and heartfelt thank you from me to you, the listener, for sharing your time to listen to this podcast. You can find more episodes on your favorite streaming platform, or you can go to www.runfromthenorm.com to learn more. As a reminder, our mission is to motivate with compassion, listen without judgment, inspire with curiosity, one person at a time. I hope we have succeeded. Thanks again for listening, and watch for the next episode coming very soon. Remain curious, get inspired, and keep moving forward. And most importantly, get outside and run from the norm.
Check that mic, make sure it sound right, boy.